So welcome to this presentation of Sounding the Cosmos. The work really evolved out of the piece of music, which is a masterpiece. It is Bach's Passacaglia and Fugue in C minor, and it is an absolute masterpiece of classical music. It's revered by musicians worldwide in every genre. There are orchestral renditions, there's piano transcription, there even was a jazz improvisation at Carnegie Hall. It's really a piece of music that speaks very much to musicians and to their, I would say, the musician's imagination of what music is about. Bach wrote this piece when he was in his early 20s. That such a man was able to write such a piece at that time is phenomenal. And then at the time he was highly interested in the theological meaning of numbers. Do numbers carry a meaning? Are they the bearer of a creative principle? And he wrote this piece entirely out of his understanding of what numbers are, what they mean, and the creative principles which they portray. You will see that there is an ostinato figure, which is a theme of 8 measures, which is going to be repeated 33 times. And he wrote this piece as a credo, as an act of faith in the Christian Trinity. It's written with the organ, and it's really a piece that is, I believe in God, I believe in the resurrection. That was the meaning behind the piece. And because we are at a conference that seeks to unite art and spirituality, we have taken this piece and we have gone and looked at what are the creative principles which can stand, I would say, as the ideals of truth of the piece. What stands behind the piece as a creative principle? That is something that we can say is of a religious nature. What higher ideal do I place above me? What higher truth do I place above me? Then you have the realm of the arts, what lives in the realm of beauty. And then we added, choreographed entirely out of the piece, the movement art of Eurythmy, which is, do human gestures bear meaning? Are they meaningful? Are they creative? Are they good? So you have the 3 principles that we have tried to bring: the truth of the religious or creative principles, the beauty, the piece is gorgeous, of the artistic principles, and then the goodness of the human gesture. Is the human gesture a bearer of good? And Eurythmy is not a dance, it's an art of movement, and it does not translate music into movement, because when we hear something, we do not hear what we're hearing. So we do not hear the piano. We take sound in, the sound is broken in the ear, and then we hear our own reconstruction of the sound. So we do not hear the outward phenomena, we hear our own creative, reconstructive principles within us. And Eurythmy tries to look at those reconstructive gestures and say, that translated into movement, what does it give? And that is some of what you will see at the end when we perform the piece. And then the last thing I'm going to say in the introduction is that the work out of this piece comes entirely out of the work of Brigitte, Armenier, the pianist, and it comes out of the experience of playing the piece. Often, in the realm of the arts, we try to impose a theological pattern on top of it. Oh, we have a cool pattern, this seems to correspond maybe to that. Let's try to see if we can fit it on top of that. The problem is that it kills what is actually living within the piece. And so this work, you can take it as a hypothesis. We do not say that it's the truth of the piece, but it is out of our work as, I would say, as artist, as pianist, as eurythmist. Out of the work, we have the impression that the gestures at work in the music are the gestures that we are going to present today. So, the ostinato, 8 measures, is given 33 times. 33 times, 21st time in the first half of the piece, the Passacaglia, and then of the 8 measures, only the first half is taken, and that becomes a thematic entry, and that is repeated 12 times. Musicologists said, oh, we know that this is a credo, we know that Bach was highly religious, so maybe 33 has to correspond to some kind of biblical New Testament, Old Testament meaning. They have different ways of dividing up the fugue. No one really agrees on how it should be divided. the first 10 times the ostinato comes, it sounds like maybe, they're nice and clear. Perhaps we could call that the 10 Commandments. Then the ostinato becomes harder to hear. Maybe we could call that the wandering of the people away from God. This sounds as if it has a celebratory nature. Maybe you could say it's the Christmas principles, and then the fugue corresponds to the New Testament. But the problem is all these different analyses have holes in them. They do not stand up to when you listen to the piece. It's a cool idea. It lacks something. What they do all agree on, and in a way that is what gave the unfolding of what we're given today, is that the 17th thematic entry is special. There are 16 before, then there's something special that happens that stands on its own, and then there's 16 after that. So, based on that, what we worked out is that actually there are not 10 at the beginning, there are 12. 12 that hold together. Then there's a principle of 7 or 9, and then in the fugue you have a principle of 3. So 12, 7, and 3. Now 12, 7, and 3 are by no means random numbers. In cosmology, we have the zodiacal constellations, the 7 planets, and the Holy Trinity. But in music, you have the 12-note chromatic scale, the 7-note diatonic scale, and the notes of major, minor, and dissonant. When it comes to time, we have the 12 months. We order our year, I would say, according to 12 months and 7 days of the week, and then we have 3 great periods of the day. In poetics, you have the consonantal gestures, the vocalic gestures, and then the modes of epic, lyric, and dramatic. There's 12 senses, the 7 life processes. You could have the 12 labors of Hercules and the 9 muses. And actually, 7 or 9, you can have 7, or you can consider that it's 7 plus 2, 9, because of the 9 muses, the 9 arts. So you really much have, the first 12 have a consonantal gesture, then you go into the realm of the vowels, everything that expresses soul, life, and beauty. This is form, this is movement, soul movement, and then you really enter into the human domain of the 3, thinking, feeling, willing. The Holy Spirit, God the Son, God the Father, is another way of saying thinking, feeling, and willing. So you have, throughout the piece, a picture of the cosmos, then that is plunged, a picture of the working of the planets, the qualities of the planets, and then the fugue is a picture of the human being standing upright. And 33 is the number of vertebrae that we have. When this is not a work that we'll do today, we don't have time, but when you look at the sculptural processes of the vertebrae, the first 12 are very clear. The first 21 are very clear. We are in this realm. And then when you come to the lower vertebrae, you have a transformation that happens. And in the piece, these first 21 have no modulations. That means that the keys, the notes are always the same. And then when you come here, you have modulations, meaning that the intervals stay the same, but the notes change. So there is a kind of transformation, a molding away from what is very clear in the spine to what is less clear, but is also part of the spine. So before we go any further, we will give you sound examples of what we're speaking about, so that it's not just words. And we'll begin with the ostinato figure and think of the qualities of Aries, everything that has to do with coming into awareness of oneself, of one's self. That I have, I would say, drawn out of every time the 8 measures sound, they have a form principle, which is then translated, transformed into something that is choreographed in space, because I really choreograph everything I do out of the chord progression and many things that are happening in music. So, for example, this turns into this turns into that form principle turns into this. form in space. But you can feel as if this first ostinato figure, these first 8 measures, has something of the Aries quality that holds everything in potential, but we have not gone through the zodiac. We are just at the beginning of the spring. Everything is in potential in the seed, but it hasn't blossomed out into nature. So, this is what you just heard, and you have a series of stacked octaves. Now, Bach was a genius. Credo, I believe, is at the center of this piece, and when you add up the number of the letters Credo, C equals 3, A, B, C, R equals 17, you come to the number 43. When you add the intervals from C to G, you have a fifth in music, the interval is a fifth. Then from G to E flat, you have a third. When you add up the intervals of this theme, you get 43. Now 43 is by no means a random number. It corresponds in physiology to the pairs of nerves of the peripheral nervous system. So what links the brain down through the spine. And in antiquity, there was a picture for that. It was the picture of the harp. So, a picture of one's nervous system is the musical instrument of the harp. Human beings played upon the strings of the harp as the gods played upon the nervous system of the human being, singing consciousness into being. And so every time this ostinato figure sounds, you can feel as if the entire peripheral nervous system is sounded into being, is played upon as you would play upon a harp. All right. For the sake of time, I will only show you a few examples from the zodiac, and then we'll work a little bit more with the planets, and then we'll say a few words about the fugue. Aries is what you just heard. Then a new rhythm is introduced. For Taurus and Gemini, there is an upward gesture and a downward gesture in Gemini. That pattern is repeated for the next set of 3 figures. Cancer is one line, Leo, Virgo, a new rhythm, one that portrays an outer radiance. You will hear in music there's an outer radiance, and in Virgo that turns inward and becomes an inner radiance. Then with Libra, you have really the principles of equilibrium, everything that has to do with balancing out. And that introduces a new gesture, one rhythm that is going to stay the same for the three, Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius, but there will be a growing intensity of the three. Here everything will rise, everything will descend, and here there will be a rising and a descending at the same time. And then for Capricorn, we come back to our pattern. Capricorn does one thing, Aquarius and Pisces hold together, and there's a reversal from Aquarius into Pisces. And that concludes the zodiac, zodiacal gestures, and is, I would say, a quick picture of the first 12 figures. So now very concretely, Cancer has to do in embryology with the forming of the chest. It has to do the gesture in embryology that corresponds to the Cancer gesture is bringing the periphery to the human being to create an enclosure that will house the heart of Leo. And so in the music, you hear how there is this sense of unfolding from the periphery and wrapping around, spiraling the music around according to the same gesture. In embryology, it's also the formation of the inner ear. The cochlea has two two fluids, the endolymph and the perilymph, in the membranous labyrinth, and they spiral around in the same way. And the Eurythmy gesture that corresponds to, I would say, the zodiacal constellation of Cancer is the, and with you feel your way into the inner nature of something. You know because you sense something. So think back to what you heard, and now you will hear the ostinato in the bass, but above it there is, I would say, the spiraling gesture of Cancer. To hear, but could you feel how above it the music does this? It comes and it wraps around. The creation of everything that has to do with the chest. And then we come within Leo, and with Leo, the Eurythmy gesture is the streaming of the heart up to the sun, and the streaming of the sun down into the heart. We are in the middle of summer. You really have this outer radiance in the month of June, this outer radiance of Leo. And the rhythm that is introduced, that will be the same for Virgo, is the short, short, long, pa-pa-pum, pa-pa-pum, pa-pa-pum. In the Greek meter, that is the anapest. It's called a rising rhythm. And a rising rhythm, it's also portrayed in the pitch. It rises. You have this outward release from Cancer into Leo. And this C5 is going to be the highest note that we have had until now. This is, by now, we have gone several ostinato figures in, and we hit C5, which is going to stay the highest note until the famous 17th figure. So, Leo. and you will hear how there is a soaring in Scorpio, a soaring melody in a way above, and everything goes down as does the poison tail of the Scorpio. And then in Sagittarius, the consonantal gesture is the G, the archer. It's a creating of space. When you draw a bow, you have the double movement. One pulls back, the other pulls forward, so that you can go far. This creation of space is found in the music in the sense that you have a rising line and a descending line at the same time. You have a counter movement in the voices, and you can hear like they are opening up. So maybe you will now hear the three, one after the other, so that you can form a bit of a picture. The theme has always been at the left hand, and now it's going to be at the right hand for the first time. So it was always at the bottom, and now we have it above at the right hand at the very, very top. And the Eurythmy gestures that corresponds to the Pisces constellation. Everything on the left goes down, and everything on the right goes up. It is, I would say, the great watery consciousness of Pisces that has to do with this opening from this opening upward on the one hand and descending downward on the other. And you find that echoed absolutely beautifully in the music. The Ostinato is going to be at the top once more for the last time, and then it will plunge down again, and it will always be at the left hand for the 9 figures. And so, from the zodiac, we come to the world of the planets, to all the vowels, to all the diphthongs, to everything that has to do with soul color. There is going to be a great speaking. Now the Ostinato figures change, they have a new quality, and you can really feel as if the forms that we worked our way through are now lived from within, and it's really a world of color as we go through the the sun and the outer planets. The Earth, the brilliance of life unfurling. When you come to the moon, you have in the music the quality of the moon that has to do with reflected light. And in embryology, the moon gesture is linked to the skin, everything that is held within. This quality of holding something within. And for the first time, and the only time, the ostinato is going to be within the left hand that does something at the bottom, and the right hand that does something else at the top. Now the theme is going to be within the skin. And you have an element, do, mi, re, do, sol, do, mi, re, do, sol, do, mi, re, do, fa, that is repeated, as you can imagine that we have this game of reflected light in the moon. It's the messenger god, everything that has to do with cunning, with intelligence. And he is often portrayed with the medical staff that has the two, can you say the médecin, the two, I don't know how you call them in English, that...
They're serpents.
The what?
Are they serpents?
Yes, they can be, but it's also that weaving. And in the music, we have a descending line and we have a rising line. You have lines that cross. It goes one way, it goes the other way. It goes one way, it goes the other way. There's this crossing that happens. And if you think of the Eurythmy gesture for Mercury, that corresponds to, I would say, the planetary gesture of Mercury, you have this very bright right side that is called into movement, the sparkle of intelligence. And then the Eurythmy gesture that corresponds to Venus has the left arm round in this ever generous, creating, giving quality of Venus, and this pours forward in the right hand. So there is a going from the left hand into the right hand, the giving gesture of Venus, which we find beautifully illustrated in Botticelli's The Birth of Venus, where you can feel in the hand, the left hand with the hair this round, and then this giving on the right. Though it's held, there is, in a way, a giving of oneself with the right. And in music, you have everything goes from the left hand to the right hand, from the left to the right, from the left to the right. Earth, inner planets, what do we come to? The sun. And if you could just be, I'm amazed by the fact that Bach, to portray in music the resurrection of Christ, chose to put as the 17th, as the heart of the piece, a picture of the sun, a picture of resurrected light that rises every morning. I am the light of the world. He places at the center of his piece a picture of the sun. Everything that has to do with the sun has to do with point and periphery. In projective geometry, you consider the sun to be a counter space. The moon we can look at. The moon is visible. We can raise our eyes to the moon and see it. But the sun, where's the sun? You ask the child, where's the sun? It's there. Can you look at it? Yeah, the sun's there. Where are you? I'm in the sun. In our experience, the sun over there is a counter space, it's a hollow space, and we live within the sun. The moon is a closed body. The sun is a body turned inside out. We live within the sun. And in music, in music that corresponds to the quality of the octave. You have the prime turned inside out, it's the octave. You reach the note again, but on a higher level. You've turned the scale inside out. And in this variation, you have the theme, do, sol, but it goes through a reversal where you have a low chord, a high chord, to go back to the interval, do, sol, do, mi, sol. The theme is turned inside out every time it sounds. And then you have a descent of chords, and you can feel that it's the beaming of the rays of the sun shining down on the earth. Remember how I had said about the highest note in Leo? We have a new higher note, and then even higher over here. And here you have a huge drum. You go from, this is the second to lowest note on the piano. You can almost go no lower. Then you jump more than 4 octaves, and then you come back. This, for a pianist, is huge. It's a huge, huge movement. You can't, in a way, you can't make a bigger movement. And it's done over and over and over again in the sun variation. Then we come to the outer planets, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and a whole new world is opened up. But there's a growing intensity in the Ostinato. So we come to Mars and we come to speed. Poco più mosso, a little bit faster. Now we have a new rhythm. We have never had so many notes per beat. We have 6 notes per beat. Because there are 3 beats per measure, we have 18 notes per measure. 18, remember that. We'll come back to it. You have this principle of speed. And you can feel with the god of Mars, the god of war, you have this sending of the cosmic iron, the meteors that are carrying, the carriers of cosmic iron that is pelting down on the earth. In physiology, we have blood in the blood. We have iron in the blood that helps us form hemoglobin, which helps us to carry oxygen. Oxygen, a normal, healthy adult breathes 18 times per minute. And the iron in our blood helps us carry this oxygen in the variation that has the quality of Mars. You have 18 notes per minute, which means that every bar is a picture of a human breathing minute. There's more to say, but maybe Mars. majesty. We have a conservative, traditional values that are embodied in the image of Jupiter. And it says, fieramente, proudly, very much of a Jupiter, the king, sitting on the throne. A new rhythm is introduced, the dactyl, long, short, short, long, short, short, long, short, short, which is the opposite of what we had earlier. Long, short, short. So that, a descending rhythm in the right hand, and then in the left hand, short, long. You have the ostinato that becomes quicker, more help, and the voices above that take on majesty. In the Eurythmy gesture, the left hand holds the center on the palm, and the right hand goes around. And you can feel the majesty of Jupiter as he rules the world. Saturn, chronos, time, the inexorable pounding of fate. And to end the 21 figures, we're going to have a picture of the entire cosmos sounding at the same time. All the voices now are going to come together, all the gestures, the rising gestures, the descending gestures, the various rhythms that we have had in a way. You have this whole spiraling of the cosmos that comes to close the Passacaglia. And because we have created a picture of the world, the created world, now that the world is created, what do you have to do? You have to have a human being in it, otherwise what was the point? And at the end of the cosmos, you have this tearing apart of the space, a little bit like the cry of a newborn that is born. We've had, I would say the mother has been pregnant with the entire potential of the human being, and here the human being is born in this cord and cries in pain as the lungs are torn apart. And within that cry of coming into being, you have the first note that is going to be the beginning of the fugue, the human element. onto a figure is the subject, do, sol, mi, fa, sol, la, fa, sol, and the notes are long. You have to do with the element of will, everything that has to do with God the Father. Then the first counter subject, mi, si, si, do, is a 5-note counter subject. And the picture of Christ's passion in paintings is the red rose. When you wanted to portray Christ's passion, you would have a red rose, or the painters would paint a red rose, and the red rose is built according to the pentagram. I already did it. Okay, a pentagram that is a 5-note subject. A 5-pointed star. The pentagram that symbolizes the sun, Christ's passion, is what gives in music this first counter subject. And then the second counter subject is the fluttering dove, the Holy Spirit. Everything that has to do with thinking, this holy, this very fine quality. So maybe, could you just play the subject? Just the subject. That's God the Father. God the Son. And the fluttering of the Holy Spirit. And this is going to be introduced 12 times. And at the beginning, they come relatively close one to another, and then as time goes by, there's more and more space between the thematic introductions. And this space, more and more material, as human beings, I would say, inhabit their world. There's more and more space between these principles that come together. All right, so now to close the picture of the piece, you can say that you have 33 thematic entries, which correspond to the life of Christ. Then we come at the top of the last page to the Napolitan sixth chord, which Bach uses to sound death and crucifixion and death. The Napolitan sixth chord is stop, thou shalt go no further. There's nothing beyond that. It's a terrible chord. And then the last page, the coda, there are no more thematic entries. So everything that has created our piece, the zodiac, the planets, the human being is no longer there. I would say Christ has risen, and we are in a different space. We have something different that arises that is no longer of the earthly world, and we have a coda where there is no more thematic material. And so, the piece, the zodiac, the planets, the Trinity. And just to bring it one step closer to us, why does it matter? The space and the counter space of the zodiacal principles and of the planetary gestures, everything is found within the human being. We are a picture in small of the principles which have created the world. That's one way of perhaps looking at our own bodies. And you can see that this piece is built entirely out of the numbers. We have not explored this equation. This equation is Brigitte's work in numerology on this piece. 72 plus 18 minus 4 divided by 2 comes out to 43. We could spend time looking at where these numbers are found and why they are important. In projective geometry, they are important numbers. But once again, you can feel like the Credo is a sounding of the peripheral nervous system. We have the heartbeat and the breathing of the human being that is really explored. What happens on a cosmic scale with the sun going through the zodiac over 25,922 years when it's divided into a Platonic day, we have 72 years. It's the same rhythms that we have within ourselves. We breathe a Platonic year per day, and our heart beats a Platonic day per minute. And then the mirroring of the thematic entries that you have between 21 and 12, if you switch the numbers around, you have a mirroring gesture. So between the ostinato and the tema fugatum, you have this mirroring gesture, which you can, I would say, bring to the subject, first counter-subject and second counter-subject, as the crossing of the muscle chains in the back that allow us to stand upright, the crossing of the aortic and pulmonary veins in the rhythmic system that bring that about, and then the crossing of the optic nerve that allows us to see. So you have this crossing that allows consciousness in the rhythmic system, in the metabolic system, and in the thinking. And so this piece, to conclude, and then we'll show it to you, to conclude, this piece can be seen, can be felt, and once again it's a hypothesis, it doesn't have to be taken as what it is, but it is one way of looking at the creative principles that stand behind music, the human being, the creative world, where you have in the Passacaglia first an elaboration of all the elements born out of truth and out of beauty, and then the Trinity as a way of embodying goodness. So you can say that the Passacaglia and Fugue is a sounding picture, is a picture and sound of an upright human being, upright in his thinking, feeling, and willing, or upright in his relation to the Trinity, standing among, I would say, Zodiac and the planetary gestures. And if that is not a way of saying, I believe in the meaning of life, then I don't know what Bach did. So, we will show you the piece in its entirety, and then that will be that.